Here is a question you have probably never thought about. What happened to children who lost their parents before there were orphanages? In the modern world, the system catches you. If your parents die, there are relatives, foster care, adoption agencies, government programs. You were never simply dropped. Your ancestors had none of that. If a mother died in childbirth and a father died the next season, the child was left with nothing but the group. And what the group decided to do with that child is one of the darkest and most surprising stories in human history. Start with the story everyone knows but never thinks about. Oedipus. In the most famous myth of ancient Greece, a baby is abandoned on a mountainside because the prophecy says he will kill his father. His ankles are pinned together and he is left to die. A shepherd finds him, takes him to another city, and raises him as his own son. The myth was written by Sophocles around 429 BCE, but the myth was not pure invention. It was based on a real practice. In ancient Greece and Rome, unwanted babies were sometimes exposed, left outside the city walls on hillsides or in the woods. Some died. Some were found by strangers and raised as slaves or servants. A few, like the myth, were found by shepherds and raised as their own. The word for this practice was exposure, and it was legal for centuries. A father in ancient Rome could pick up his newborn, walk outside the city, and leave it on the ground. No law stopped him. No law punished him. The baby's life depended entirely on whether someone else happened to walk the same path. But here's the surprising part. The practice of exposure was mostly found in complex agricultural societies, the ones with cities and laws and strangers. The further back you go, the rarer it becomes. In small hunter-gatherer bands, orphans were almost never abandoned. They were adopted immediately and without question. The anthropologist Richard Lee spent decades living with the Kung San of the Kalahari Desert in the 1960s and 1970s. He documented something that surprised him. When a child lost a parent, the child was taken in by grandparents, aunts, uncles, or sometimes people who were not related at all. There was no debate about it. The child simply became part of another family overnight. Lee recorded cases of orphans being raised by grandmothers who were already old and frail, carrying the child on their hip for years, because nobody else even thought to refuse. This is not kindness as we understand it. This is biology. Humans are cooperative breeders. That is the scientific term, and it means our species evolved to raise children together. A mother does not raise a child alone. She raises it with the help of the entire group. Sarah Blaffer HRYD, the anthropologist who wrote the book Mothers and Others in 2009, argues that this cooperative breeding is the single most important thing that made us human. Other apes raise their infants almost alone. A chimpanzee mother carries her baby, feeds it, protects it, and if she dies, the baby usually dies too. Human infants are different. They are born expecting help. They smile at anyone. They reach out to anyone. They are designed to be adopted. The grandmother hypothesis, proposed by the anthropologist Kristen Hawkes in 1998, adds another layer. Human women live long past their reproductive years, which is almost unique in the animal kingdom. Why? Because grandmothers who helped raise their grandchildren, including orphaned grandchildren, made those grandchildren more likely to survive. The grandmother who carried an orphaned grandchild on her hip was not being sentimental. She was continuing her own genetic line through the child. The old woman with a baby on her back was the original orphanage, and she had been doing the job for hundreds of thousands of years before any building was built for it. The Kung were not unusual. Across the ethnographic record, hunter-gatherers consistently adopted orphans. The Hadza of Tanzania, the Aka of Central Africa, the Inuit of the Arctic, all of them took in children who lost their parents. The Aka, a pygmy group, are famous for fathers who hold their babies more than fathers in any other culture. When a mother died, the father or an aunt took over completely. Nobody starved alone. Nobody was left to the forest. But before you start feeling warm, there is the other side, the survival math. In a band of 30 people, every mouth has to be fed. A child who cannot hunt, cannot gather, and cannot carry water is a pure cost. For most of human history, the group absorbed that cost because caring for children made the whole group stronger. But when the math stopped working, the caring stopped too. The Inuit have oral histories of famines where families made choices that modern people cannot imagine. During a starvation winter, if a mother could not produce milk and no other woman could feed the baby would not survive the season. Some communities made the decision to leave the youngest behind when the group had to move, because carrying a starving infant would slow everyone down and kill the whole group. The anthropologist Knud Rasmussen recorded these accounts during his expeditions in the 1920s. The choice was not cruelty, it was arithmetic. One life weighed against 30. The same arithmetic appeared in complex societies, but with a different tool. Instead of leaving children to die quietly, they built institutions. In 1198, Pope Innocent III founded the Hospital of Santo Spirito in Rome, the first foundling hospital in Europe. It had a rotating cylinder built into the wall, a kind of wooden turntable. Parents could place their baby in the cylinder, turn it, and the baby would rotate into the building without anyone seeing the parent's face. No questions, no shame. The wheel was built because too many babies were being left in the street. The church was trying to catch them before the dogs did. Long before that, the Code of Hammurabi, written in 1754 BCE in ancient Mesopotamia, contained laws about adoption. One clause says that if a man adopts a child and raises it, that child inherits like a biological child. Another clause says that if the adopter later abandons the child, the adopter is punished. The first written laws about orphans were not about punishing orphans. They were about protecting them from people who would take them in and then throw them away. The same pattern appears in the Quran, revealed in the 7th century CE. Care for orphans is one of the most repeated commands in the text. The Prophet Muhammad himself was an orphan. The Islamic legal system developed the kafala system, which allows a family to take guardianship of an orphan without erasing the child's own family name. The child keeps their identity, the family provides the care. The Romans took adoption to the extreme. Adoption was not for orphans, it was for power. Wealthy Roman men without sons would adopt adult men as their heirs. The Emperor Trajan adopted Hadrian, and Hadrian became one of the greatest emperors in Roman history. For a brief period in the 2nd century CE, the Roman Empire was ruled by a chain of adopted sons, each one chosen, not born, to rule. The Roman elite understood something that the king understood by instinct. A child you choose is still your child. So what is the truth about orphans in ancient times? The truth is that the system your ancestors built was not a building, it was the group itself. A child without parents in a hunter-gatherer band was not alone. The group was the parent, the grandmother was the parent, the aunt was the parent, the stranger who happened to be standing nearby was the parent. That is why humans survived. Not because we are strong, not because we are fast, not because we have sharp teeth. Because when a child lost everything, someone carried them. The next time you hear about a child waiting for adoption, remember that this instinct is not modern, it is not Western, it is older than cities, older than laws, older than writing. It is the reason the species is still here. Somewhere in your family tree, thousands of years ago, there is an orphan who was carried, fed, and raised by someone who did not have to, and you are here because they did.